Okay, so welcome to today's session, everybody. I hope that you're having a good week. I know Carnival is coming up, so um, well, just be safe, okay? All right, so today we're beginning to look at chapter. Yes, Judy, I see your hand up already.
Hey, sir. So I think on, gosh, I'm hearing myself echoing. Gosh. Oh,
Turn your volume down a
on
little.
the e-classroom, you have something headed as schedule for the presentations.
Uh huh.
But I believe when I open it up, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not actually seeing a schedule with dates. So is it that if chapter 4 is March 5th, then if I'm doing chapter 5, then we're the week after, right? Because we're having it every week, we're
No.
presenting. I mean, I know I have to
No.
correlate it to the course
All right,
outline, but I
so
said, let me
I'm,
just
I'm,
directly ask you.
all right, I'm going to the e-class and I'm going to check that document because it shouldn't be that. It should have names and dates on it already.
Oh, gosh. Okay, well, it's probably me. Okay.
Is it probably you?
It's not probably, it is me.
No, I'm going
No,
to check.
sir, that's not Halloween.
All right, so the question is, are you, all right, so this is what the page looks like. All right, so these are the
Correct.
textbooks here. You all know that. This item, are you talking about, or this item here?
No. Yes, course schedule. No, 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 not that. I don't think,
You open
Uh,
this.
no, no, I'm not talking about that. To me, I think maybe it was the course schedule. To me, it was the presentation schedule that I was referring to. Is
But
there
that's
something
what, but
there
it
for
should look like,
presentation?
it should look like this. This is what it's an this document here. Let me just close that window.
Uh-huh.
And you see there are dates and times.
All right, this making sense.
All right. Chances are, let me get rid of this nonsense. All right. Chances are when whoops, I closed it. Anyway, I know I have it here. This is what you should be seeing.
Okay,
All
okay,
right.
okay.
If you're opening it on your
Mark
phone
F as well. Okay.
may not be showing you the whole thing. So
Okay.
I have to update the document in any case because Sanafa Rampasad is no longer a member of the class. And I have to update this into actually, while I'm yabbering around, I could just do that one time, get that out of the way, um, and update this document so everybody can see what's going on. This is Tuesday's class, this is the schedule, and we are getting rid of Sanafa. I shouldn't say it. It sounds bad when I say it that way, right?
Getting rid.
Yeah, let me copy this, and we are
So wait, there's
substituting.
two or three, because you said an hour and a half each. Okay, copy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right,
So
there are
it's
two
two.
presentations per day. Yeah.
All right, I see what really going on here. All right, thanks, sir.
All right. So that's the schedule. Um, well, these were so Paige was not here before, but Paige, are you aware of the presentation that you've been assigned to?
No.
Right. So you're seeing it here now. Um, Chapter 9 being in communities, and your presentation date is the 19th of March. You are partnered with Budram, Trisha Budram and Denise Braffett. So you ought to be getting in contact with them. Hold a second, hearing somebody binging on the side there. Wow, so many things. Yeah,
But sir,
something.
as we're on date, unless you're still talking to the other person,
No,
updating
you
them,
too. Uh huh.
are you hearing me echoing?
Nope.
Okay, yeah, it's just on my end then. As we're on dates, is
Mm-hmm.
there somewhere else that has the dates for self-analysis paper, midterm, and that, or is
It's right
that
here.
more just kind of
It's right here in the
okay?
same document. The delivery dates
Yes.
for all these things are in the same document. So whatever you're doing, you need to get this document to show up on your platform that you're utilizing so that you'll be able to see all the deadlines and dates.
Mm-hmm.
Because I made this downloadable so that you can print it if you want because it also details all of the different assignments and
Mm,
kind of gives you the
yeah.
instructions and the marking schemes for it. All right.
Ye- Yeah, I think
So,
I was using the course outline and not. Okay, all right, no problem,
all right.
sir.
Yeah, that course outline actually
Thank you.
has a schedule, but it doesn't have anything populated in it because I found it was a bit cumbersome to have all of that, and I separated out the schedule or what is called the course calendar away from it with specific instructions about the assignments. All right.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So
yes.
the other person who was absent at the time the grouping was Renel Jack. So Renel, you were assigned to presentation 8 due on the 26th of March on chapter 13 from the second textbook that we're using, the DAFT textbook. You are assigned to, or you're grouped with, Miss Peters and Miss Samaru. So you should be reaching out to them. Jack, you're here with us?
Yes, I am.
All right. So did you download this document?
Yeah, I did. And
Okay, not quite hearing you very well.
I hear an echo. I'm hearing an echo.
Y- Yeah, yeah. It sounds to me like your speakers might be a bit loud.
I'm not sure.
All right. But have you joined the WhatsApp chat group?
Yes,
Right. So Jennings, have you joined the WhatsApp
no,
chat group?
nothing yet.
Right. So you need to because you need to contact these people who are also on the WhatsApp chat group as well. Once
Okay.
you reach out to them, then you all can begin to set up your own little subgrouping to work out how you're going to go about. I say present, but really what you're doing is teaching. You're going to be teaching the chapter to the class.
Okay.
So you'll have to work out what's going on there. All right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
question. The
Yeah.
time of the class is 5 to 8 or 5:30 to 8:30?
5:30 to 8:30. The reason
Okay.
for that is because we have a number of people coming in from work, and I've decided to set it up at 5:30 because half the time I sit here waiting for students to come in. 5:30 passes. You understand?
Okay.
Just to give people a chance to get in, out of work, settle down, or at least after work log into the the thing. Judy, you still have another question you wanted to ask? See your hand still up. Or should I put that down for you?
Oh, yeah, let me just go and put that down. But I do have another question
All right, go ahead.
because I was laying out the different assessments. And to me, again, I probably made a mistake, but I was seeing self-analysis paper,
Yep,
but
that's
then I
correct.
was also seeing reflection and leadership action plan. So
Yep.
I'm not sure if reflection and the self-analysis paper is the same thing or they're two separate.
Were you here in the last class?
I was, yeah, I was. I was also I in my engagement party, to be honest. So I was a
Right.
little
Okay.
distracted, but
Right.
I
Right.
was
Right.
present and
Okay.
trying
So
to focus.
you were, yeah. Now you should probably go and look back at
The
that
video.
that video because the self analysis is a separate exercise from the leadership action plan.
Mm, mm-hmm,
All
mm-hmm,
right.
mm-hmm.
The leadership action plan is also a form of final reflections, whereas the self analysis is let me show you the document. This is the self-analysis instructions. It's sort of like your own personal autobiography where you're trying to work out why you are the way you are today.
Yes. But
In
so
and
I saw that up front. So is that soon or is that something that's
no,
due May 18th?
it's due May 18th because it's going to take you some time to develop that self-analysis. That's what the
Okay.
dates are here for. All right.
Okay. All right.
The the other document here is your reflections and leadership plan. Okay. And I said to
Mm-hmm.
everybody last week you should have answered the first question from here and put it away somewhere. And the other
Okay.
questions you will identify at the end. When we finish the course, you will write this up afterwards because this is a retrospective. But the first question is before we start anything, what are your expectations? And I kind of asked that question
Yeah, you
in
did.
the thing to give you kind of, kind of kickstart in it. But this one's a little more
Mm-hmm.
specific. It's about what you expect not only of the course but of me, your lecturer, and yourself.
Okay, copy. All right, thank you. And
That makes
I
sense?
will definitely watch the video. It does make
Right?
sense. Thank you.
Okay, so we did go through all of these things, and the use of the marking scheme and how things are set aside for it. Um, so those are the things. You'd realize that no exams. Everybody who comes in. This midterm exercise is another reflection exercise, but it's reflection of specific items coming out of chapters 5 and 6, I believe it is. Is going to focus on, yeah, 6 and 7, teams and groups, and integrity and moral purpose. These two chapters are going to be the focus of the midterm exercise because of its relative importance in the scheme of things around us, which is why it is scheduled, and that is not like a one and done. It's it the it's I expect that you should be tackling this between the 19th of March to the 9th of May. That's when the exercise goes live, and you guys should be able to handle your stories from there. So by the 9th of May, you should put it in. Cool? And then the last thing that closes off the class is the debate exercise, where we rearrange you guys into another set of teams and you all deal with the debate on the last teaching week of the class. And then afterwards, during between the last day of class and the grade input deadline, I've extended the timetable, not timetable, but the timeline to allow you to submit assignments after the end of uh, formal classes so that you don't, well, primarily to give you all some more time to finish write up these documents and do the reflections necessary. Now, so far, the only person yet who has not come to class is Katie Chotu. So what I will do is I will have to email her separately just to find out what's going on with her, because it's almost the third week and we haven't seen her yet. Unless she's sitting in class not saying anything. Not seeing her. Nope. All right. All right. So that kind of recaps things that might be useful to Priya and and Paige, people who were absent from the last class, to kind of see that. Yeah. Okay, Judy. Okay. So with that being said, let's start on the presentation for today. All right. So as I said before, this is the name of the class that we're going to be dealing with. All right, let me just turn my camera off a little bit so y'all can focus on this here. Now, feel free to ask questions, make comments. In fact, I will stop at some point in time and be asking you to make comments and asking you to contribute. Okay? All right, so the first thing we're taking this from the course description. This is from the course outline itself. That this course is a introductory course in leadership, ethics, and governance. It is not meant to be an massive piece of work in terms of leadership studies, because I mean you could do an entire degree and a master's in this area. Okay, this course is going to focus on your personal experiences with the content that we're going to be looking at. It's going to focus on your ability to share your personal experiences with the various topics, and as you can see here, through self-analysis, so that this is the essence of what the first assignment that Judy was talking about, um, which is the first assignment, which is self-analysis assignment. There's a part, that part there is allowing us to get you to focus on you and how you have arrived at the person you are today, and how much of what has gone in the past has affected your attitudes and readiness for taking up leadership positions. Um, Personal and leadership self-assessment and values exploration. This is also part of what you're going to be engaging in. the application of tools of leadership, ethical decision making, and good governance. So those are things that we are going to be focused on in terms of um, some of the activities we're going to get up to. So the midterm exercise actually is going to examine this ethical decision making, and you'll see what that's going to be about. Course objectives. Now there are various course objectives, starting from the very simple: comprehend and understand theories of leadership, the tools of ethical decision making, and three, create a plan that applies the concept of good governance. So that's the last assignment that you're doing. In the reflection, in that reflection, you also have to set up a leadership plan for continuity for yourself. Um, Organize teams in such a way that it demonstrates and display an awareness of understanding. You're going to actually engage in this in numerous ways. You have the presentation to do, then you also have the debate to take part in. All of them are going to give you opportunities to put into practice the team and group work activities, and hopefully kind of stymie some of the attitudes people have developed in Costat about group work. So there's a team of you that's going to be presenting that chapter on groups and teams. Report on issues, leadership issues facing our community, society, and propose solutions. So, so throughout our discussion of the various aspects of leadership in terms of the model and its development and so on, we're going to be engaging in current issues and contemporary issues of leadership, and we are, going to look at whether what we feel about it and how we think we should approach those things. But the one course objective that is probably going to be the most interesting one is display and modify behaviors indicative of a personal philosophy of positive leadership and ethics. So for most of us here, we've all had our behaviors modified from time to time. What methods work best, and what do you understand by behavior modification? Let me ask Caleb. Mr. Joseph?
I say hear me.
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Hi, you could repeat that quick, please.
I'm asking you, what do you understand by the phrase behavior modification?
I'm assuming in this case it could be adjusting the behavior for the given scenario that they're currently in.
All right. What type of techniques have you encountered in the past that were utilized to modify your behavior?
Oh, well, I guess I could use from my personal experience in clinicals.
Correct.
Um, so you might have some patients who are a little more difficult than others, which rightly so because some of them just, they have a fear of what they're about to enter. Some people don't have a general knowledge of X-ray as a whole. So,
Correct.
you know, fear that fear does block off constructive critical thinking. So in cases like that, you have to know how to communicate with your patient and properly explain to them um, what they're about to go through, what the examination consists of. And
Right.
you also need to know what words to use to break it down. Because some people, just don't know how to speak with them, will be able to calm them down so that we could properly get across to them what is required for them.
All right. Well, let me ask this from a different point of view. From your own personal development in your life, have you ever gone through periods of modifying your own behaviors?
Mm, I guess I could say, like in my early years of schooling, so like probably like form four go up, I end up changing my entire behavior with regards to how I approach people. So before I used to be very timid and shy, and I kind of realized that by being that kind of way, people tend to overlook you, and if you have points to get across, they won't really take you on as
Listening.
seriously.
All right, that makes sense.
So
Okay, and how
because
did
of
you
that,
go
I have to
about
change that.
how? But the question really is, how did you go about doing that? What did you utilize as the tools to get that done?
That's the thing. I don't really know.
You
I
don't really
just
know. You just know it happened.
for me, for me, it was just like I know I needed to change. Otherwise, I wouldn't reach where I want to reach in life.
Uh huh.
It's something as simple as that, because it's the simple things that build up
So,
into
so
things.
in other words, another phrase we could use there was self motivation.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if somebody had come up to you and tell you you had to do that, you figure it would work as effectively as it did then?
No, because at the end of the day, the only person who stops you from changing is you.
Very, wow, perfect, perfect. Because at the end of the day, if we were to look back on most of our lives, thank you very much, Caleb. That was excellent stuff. Um, the majority of our behavior modifications were brought on to us by one of two forms, either by external motivational factors or external stimulus. So, like for instance, I know Cappy has a child, and she would have utilized some forms of behavior modification with her child, right? Right, Miss Thomas?
Yes, sir.
And what forms did you have you used?
Um, both positive and negative. So it
All right, so
goes with
we
the
dressing this up.
behavior at hand.
No, all right, okay.
So if he
So
needs
let me ask.
punishment,
Right, there we go. Now we're starting
he
to
will
get
get
into the.
punishment. He will get grounded. I will
Right.
take away
Well,
his
I mean,
devices,
right, good. So
as
that's
well as
negative,
if
negative
there's a
reinforcement,
negative
right?
side,
Mm-hmm.
as well as if he
Does
excels in his schoolwork
it does well? Great,
and he does all
fantastic.
his homework and stuff, he is rewarded, or he might get something that he wants.
Right. So for most of us, we should see that kind of thing being utilized in our own lives from our parents. Back in our days, though, in my days, let me not age anybody here in the class. It was a little more violent though, because they used to break broomstick on you and I kind of to put you to kneel out and greet you in the corner and put your hands up. Y'all, any of y'all get behavior modification through katas?
So he's got that too.
You engage in corporal punishment?
Of course.
You do. Wow. Everybody's okay
If
with that
I
here?
don't do it, then somebody
Most of
else
you all
might do
here
it.
may have gotten that form of punishment in some time in your life. Some people maybe not. Nayak, you wanted to contribute?
Yes, I did.
Did it work?
Most of the times, yes.
You sure? Most of the time, yes. All right. So the problem here is this. This course is stating that one of its major objectives is to modify your behavior. Okay? So, can I come home by you and beat all and make you all do this? Or can we get the material to inspire you to want to do it yourself? And as Caleb said, when I leave your lives at the end of this semester, will that behavior stick? Will only stick if you feel from your own personal position and personal point of view that this type of thing is important enough to make that change and um, make that decision. That internal motivation is going to be the most important element here. So for those of you who did um, a motivational theory with Maslow's theory and that type of stuff, you would probably be knowledgeable about those external and internal stimulants or motivators in your life. Things inside yourself that make you want to change, as opposed to those things outside of you that force you to change. The ones that have the greatest impact would be those that are internal because it's always with you and it comes from you. And that's what we're hoping to do with this course. So, obviously, this is a very lofty objective that this course has. That we expect that by the end of the program or the end of this course, we would expect that you would be modifying your behaviors indicative of displaying personal philosophy of positive leadership and ethics. How many of you think that is too high a challenge? pie in the sky. Yes, Mr. Mohammed, go ahead. You have to defend your position. You just can't put your hand up and say
Yes, sir. I was trying to say that is too our challenge.
too much of a challenge.
Yes, sir.
I'm not clear on what you mean by that. Clarify.
Well, sir, we'll modify the behavior thing. That is take time.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Or does it?
I wouldn't say like one experience will change everything. I would
True.
say while you grow and go through different stuff, then
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mr. Mohammed, I want you to remember the statement you're making, because I want you to include this in your reflections, because the true test of this would be. Hold on, let me bring in this Miss Dominique. Wow, people are really having problems coming in. Dominique, welcome. Dominic, is that Dominique? Who was that? Last person. Right. All right. So let me update this. Yeah,
Carissa.
I want. Yes. Hello. Welcome. Um. Right. Here you go. Let me just update the registry. Okay. So we are in the middle of some some discussion here. Mr. Mohammed and myself are having a little bit of a dispute. He's saying that this is definitely not possible within the space of one semester. I am saying maybe we can. We'll see who will win. But I want Mr. Mohammed to include that in part of his exploration of his reflections at the end of the semester. Cool, Mr. Mohammed?
so I should write that.
You should add it. I want you to in well, not write that, but take note of it. That I'm challenging you then.
Oh, okay, okay.
All right, that I think we can in fact impact upon your ability, your behaviors in a positive manner, not negative. All right.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so these are the two textbooks we're going to be utilizing, a combination of chapters from the two textbooks that we're looking at. And now we start with chapter one, which is part of the unit, which is unit one of the text, or the first half of the text. Primarily, what we're going to be focusing on here is leadership in the context of the 21st century, and we're going to need, from our perspective, from our work, we're going to need to bring in the Caribbean experience and the local experience, for the simple reason that these textbooks that we're using, out of some degree of necessity and reliability, are US in content and exposure and their perception. So we have to take what we can from them, but and add the Caribbean context and the local context to it. All right. So we're going to have to look at those things in from the U.S. perspective, and then bring in the Trinity and the local parlance to the whole situation that we're going to be looking at. All right. So let's look first and foremost at how the model we're looking at, that you would come to recognize as the relational leadership model, is defined. So leadership in this model is defined as a relationship and ethical process of people together attempting to accomplish positive change. And the focus of this definition is about the fact that leadership is about relationships. So I want you to think back now in your lives as students to teachers that you enjoyed being in class with, that you had a good relationship, as opposed to teachers that you didn't have good relationships with, and consider the outcome of those classes, or the subject matter that they dealt with you. What was the general correlation there? Um, Let me find somebody else to pick on. Ronnie, Mr. Budram.
Good day, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I would say in those classes, I would not feel
Well,
as motivated
think.
to.
Right, there you go. Fantastic. And this is
Mm,
your own personal experience, right?
yes, correct. Yeah.
And those people that you had a good relationship with, what was the outcomes in those classes?
Um, yeah, I would have done good. I would have done great because I would have looked forward to go to class.
Correct. All right. So let's translate that now to the world of work, where you are working in a situation, not necessarily you being the leader, but you're reporting to a manager. Have you had that experience yet, or are you still
Yeah, oh
what do
yes,
you
a
do
lot
with
of
it?
times.
So talk to us about that experience because it's the
Yeah,
same
so
thing.
yeah, it's the exact same thing. Working with a manager or a superior that um, and, who would have been like a teacher like that. You wouldn't be looking forward to going to work every day, as opposed to working with persons you're comfortable with, doing things that you like. You look forward to
Correct.
going to work every day. It's a big
All right.
difference.
So when it gets to the point, and this is what I'm trying to bring to you is, when it gets to the time that you become leaders, what example would you want to follow?
Yeah, I would say I would want to be a type of leader that would make persons comfortable to come to you if they have any issues, or just to be around, that type of
Excellent,
atmosphere.
Ronnie. Excellent. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah,
Will
that's it.
others agree with Ronnie's analysis?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, Kapi, I know you, for example, you've been in both subordinate and now in some form of leadership roles in your job site,
Yes, sir.
like team leaders. All right. Would you share that same experience that Ronnie spoke about in
Yes,
terms of the
sir. It has
types
a
of
lot to
leadership?
do with the leadership style of the person that you're reporting to.
Uh-huh.
You either have employees engaged or totally disengaged.
Mm-hmm. And what happens in an institution where that is inundated with poor leadership or negative leadership individuals?
Actually, over the last couple of years, we have seen a high turnover rate
Turnover rate. Mm-hmm.
in the departments where you would see poor leadership.
Problematic. Right. And what does that eventually lead to in the organization?
So actually, right now, nothing.
No, no, it causes a problem in the organization.
It causes a problem with employees who are left behind,
Yeah.
having to now do multiple
Compensate.
tasks.
Correct. So, what do you think happens to efficiency?
It's definitely reduced. And then we
Yeah.
have stressed employees, overworked employees.
Who are
But
also going to be looking to get out.
correct. But my whole thing
Mhm.
is they should deal with
The leader.
the leaders, correct. And that's not being done.
Right. So that means even the executive levels are not recognizing the issue
That
of
there's a
the
problem.
relation
Correct.
of the yeah. So this is something that one of the reasons why this course was designed is because we have been observing since this course was created in 2010 that leadership in the Caribbean experience in particular is still very traditional in its approach of being very autocratic in nature. That a lot of leaders in positions of authority have this high road mentality. It's my way or the highway, and they're very um, most of the people don't seem to have high levels of emotional intelligence. They're very difficult to work with, and they're very well toxic in the nature of the relationship that they create around them. Now, if you're fortunate to have, and it's not gender biased, interestingly enough, it doesn't matter if the person is a woman or a man, they can both have the same types of things. Now, in your experience, though, Miss Thomas and others here who have had working experience, um, is there any significant difference between working with a man as opposed to working under a woman, I should say under female or male leadership? Whew. Maybe I can ask Miss Williams if she's here to Judy to
Hi, sir.
chime in on that. Have you been able to work under men as opposed to working under women, or a combination of?
I think it's a combination, but the thing is, I've noticed that a lot of the main producers that I've worked for have been women,
Uh huh.
and it's been smooth.
All right.
Yeah.
So you haven't noticed any specific um, issues that are gender related,
No, I haven't.
right? And that's the point I'm trying to make. That leadership is not about gender. Leadership is about the nature of the relationship that has been developed. Thank you, Jody. And it's important to recognize that, Ms. Peters, it's important for us to recognize, welcome, Ms. Peters, that the nature of the relationship is what is going to be critical, because that is what determines how oh, is my microphone too soft? Is this better, Miss Page?
No, it's not sounding so.
Am I kind of loud on my end? Hold on, let me just make some adjustments here. All right, how about that?
Better, thanks.
Okay, let me just move it more in range too. Okay, so um, what was I saying? Right, so gender issues will be part of the things that we're going to be exploring here as well. But let's move on. We're kind of jumping ahead there a bit. Those are things that we're going to be dealing with later on. But the beginning of the process is that leadership in this model is defined as the nature of the relationship. And specifically, what we're looking at doing is looking at a relationship between people who are attempting to accomplish positive change. And that's an important distinction that's going to be there. Now, when we talk about leadership, there are different frameworks under which we could look at leadership. All right. So, under the political sciences, for example, in politics, uh, leadership is about power and influence. How do I get power, and what do I use my power for in terms of the influence I can now wield? So whenever we think about leadership, the first thing that really comes to mind is political leadership, because in a lot of our cases here, it's kind of foremost in our mind. So when we look at a picture like this, and when you look at leaders, political leaders of countries, each of these leaders are powerful from for one reason or the other, and the impact that they have on the societies around them or the societies that they lead are global in nature, because the decisions that these three countries make impact positively or negatively on the countries that are so affected by them. Now, who can we substitute into this photograph here to represent our local environment? Anybody willing to put in some names there?
Rowley.
Say, uh-huh. Well, yeah, let's be respectful. It's Dr. Rowley. Uh-huh. And who
Auntie
else?
Kamala.
Right. Right. So the leader of the government and the leader of the opposition. Anybody else you'd add here?
So you could put Jack Warner.
Who?
Jack Warner.
Why would I want to put Jack Warner here? He's no longer part of the people of influence in actual government.
Oh,
Why?
sorry.
Let me
So the
ask you
president?
why. Yeah, the president, or not necessarily so much the president, but yes, we could include the president there. We could also have more people. Huh? You can have the president as well as um, chief justice, the leader from the the legislative, the executive, and the all the different branches of government. So we can repopulate this. Why would we put these people there? Because the decisions that they make influence our lives directly. Is that not what the point is? Yes, that's the point we're trying to make, right? So from this position here, you'd realize that that's why we have things like the G20 summits and so on, because when these individuals from around the world make decisions of a critical nature, it impacts upon our lives directly and indirectly, either in a positive or negative manner. So this New Delhi thing that took place last year in September was designed really to kind of focus the attention on a number of issues, but primarily climate issues, and also look at as well the impact of pandemics and that type of stuff, health issues as well, because of the COVID situation that the world had gone through. So the reason for these people getting together is to create policies and to agree to policies that would help to make things better for whom? That's the question. When these guys meet and they make decisions, the now, if you ever really pay attention to any of these worldwide conferences, you'd realize that part of the experience is also a lot of protest that take place outside of the summits, and you have counter summits that go on as well, where people with different interests will also meet and have their say as well and try to publish things. But at the end of the day, however, those opposition groupings are only spouting their position on things, whereas these people here, when they get together, they are setting policy, they're setting international policy. But each one of the leaders is going to try to represent their country's interest and try to make it of paramount importance. Now you notice in this particular instance here, we're not seeing the United States president listed for whatever reason as a list of the players, but he was there. He took part in it as well. Um, and one of the reasons why he would have been there is because his country wields a lot of power in these conferences. Was our president part of this G20? Our prime minister? Anybody remembers?
Repeat the question, sir. Repeat the question.
The question was our prime minister here invited to this summit?
Oh.
No, he wasn't. He's not part of the G20. What's the G20? The G20 is the 20 most powerful nations from an economic standpoint. That's who they invite to these meetings. All right. And the reason why I chose this thing is because it identified who everybody was and what country they represent. I know that our prime minister went to the UN conventions, um, where there is more of a balance of power there, so to speak, in terms of the world, the developed as opposed to the developing nations, that type of stuff. So again, whenever we think about leadership, one of the first things that comes to mind is the political influence or the political sphere of things. Another way, and this one we tend to get, especially if we're working, we tend to focus on leadership from the point of view of management. And the function of management or leadership in terms of management conditions on the corporate world is that it examines the effectiveness of of that leader by their ability to get the objectives and outcomes of the organization satisfied. So management, therefore, is going to pay attention to the relationship between supervisors and subordinates only in the context of getting the work done and getting the work done in such a way that the organization makes money. Because at the end of the day, all private institutions can only exist if they are profitable, and that's going to be the most important thing. So that's why, if you look at this group of individuals here, these are all identified as the top 20 business leaders of 2021. Okay, how did they become the top 20? It meant that whatever they were doing, they were being very profitable about it. How many of these people do you recognize? You should recognize a good few. Or, but the other question should be how many you don't recognize. Oh, come on. Somebody has to want to.
Hi,
Gabrielle?
sir.
Uh huh.
You say which ones you don't recognize?
Yeah. Which ones don't you recognize?
The Asian lady at the bottom.
Right. So she's the leader of. She's actually at that time that photo is taking place. She's the leader of that same thing that's written behind her, the World Economic Forum. All
Okay.
right. All right. Anybody? So you recognize everybody else?
And the white-haired guy between Oprah and Bill.
And Bill, well, you know, first name with Mr. Gates, okay. That white-haired guy, this one here. Anybody else
Yes,
wants to
sir.
take a chance of recognizing who he is? Let me just bring that back up. Yes, nobody knows who this guy is.
So no, I just don't remember the name
So
right
that's
now.
not Richard Branson.
Yes, it is. Very good. Excellent. Yes, that's
And
Richard Branson.
who's the gentleman to the top left?
Top left. This guy
Next
here,
to the, yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg. You know, I didn't even find
No,
out.
no,
I
no,
did
not
some
Mark
research.
Zuckerberg, the old man next to him. Yeah,
Which
that
one? The
one that
one in
you
the
put
middle
on.
or the one on the edge here?
Yeah,
This guy here. I think
yeah.
this is I don't want to say this is incorrectly, but I'm not sure because when I was doing the research and I was trying to figure out who's this guy, I couldn't find out who he was. But I know he's like one of the Koch brothers or something like that. Um, Quite important, but very rich kind of people. That kind of stuff. Like this is Warren Buffett, Jay Z, Oprah. This is the guy who owns or used to run Alibaba. If you remember that, and this Chinese distribution company, almost like Amazon, as opposed to Jeff Bezos over here. All right. But the idea is you understand what when we talk about leadership in a management position, we're talking about the effectiveness at making money. So that's the nature of being profitable. And sometimes the way in which the profit is made is kind of questionable as well. So we're going to be that means we are not necessarily as management looking at the ethical decision making um, that that we do take part in. But we are paying attention only to the ability of these leaders to achieve the economic outcomes that they're looking for or the business outcomes that they're looking for. All right, so another piece or another frame of reference that we can utilize when we evaluating leadership is through the lens of anthropology. So anthropology is sort of a retroactive or um, retrograde look at leadership in the past. So the way in which that happens is by looking at cultural influences, language, tools, and other such factors such as symbols and norms from our past. So in essence, what happens with anthropology is that we look back at a society that existed in the distant past and we try to evaluate their culture. We try to evaluate their language to learn more about how their leadership, as part of how their societies were run, how leaders were decided upon. So last night I was talking to another class about this same topic, and I brought up the film um, Apocalypto. How many of you all ever saw that film Apocalypto? Yeah, Paige, what do you remember from that film?
basically like the culture from back then, and
Mm-hmm.
this guy, I believe his name was Javapo, and he was basically fighting for his tribe and basically their freedom when the um
They got enslaved.
people infiltrated them and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had hidden his children, his wife in this well, right?
Yes, in a pit, and then started
Yes.
the water and so on. Yeah.
So, so his struggle is to go back and get them, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, interestingly enough, let's examine parts of that because this is how archaeology works. Um, in that little tribe, when they were just in, so other people looked at this movie. They remembered this movie. Other folks in class. So we're not in total isolation. I saw some other hands go up earlier. Other people saw. By show of hands, who saw this movie besides Miss Jennings? Come on, come on. There were other hands. All right. So if we remember the film carefully, in the smaller village, the leader of the tribe was the hi, thank you, Miss Dominique. Um, the leader of the tribe was the best hunter. That was the guy who went out there, and he was able to capture the meat because that's critical. They were hunting boar at that time, I think. Um, so in terms of their their culture and their society, their leadership rose up through strength and prowess at different activities. In this case here, strength and prowess in hunting was going to be an important element. When the guy was kidnapped and became a slave for the other tribes, their tribe was focused on being a warrior, and that was different to being a hunter. Warriors were meant to, attack and kill other folks and that type of stuff and be dominant. And they then took that group of slaves, if we want to call, or captured tribesmen, took them into the city and then took them to the top of this pyramid where they were going to be. What was going to happen to them? They were going to be sacrificed, and again by a different leader who was a religious leader, and therefore, and they were just simply, cutting out people's hearts and appeasing the people through that type of slaughter. And then, of course, you had the whole thing that was going on. Wow, Crystal is having lots of trouble. All right. So we understand that in terms of working out the society in any country or in any time frame, looking at all of the things from the past will help to determine how people rose to leadership in their societies and so on. Now, my question to you would be, and I want somebody to kind of tackle that. What do you think if 1,000 years from now, another set of people looked at our time frame and were assessing the nature of our society? How did we arrive at selecting leadership, or how did people arrive in leadership positions? What do you think would hint at that? I need to ask somebody because you're just chicken. Bunch of chicken. Idris, if we use that glass looking backwards on our society, what would they find to indicate how our leadership came up?
Well, we would have like an election and we would vote.
Right. So we had a form of democracy, right?
Yeah.
And how did our societies run?
Um, well, they would, the person in power would lay out laws which we would follow,
Uh huh.
and that would guide society in a certain direction.
Yeah. Okay. And do you think they may look upon us as, hey, this was a really good system, or do you think they may look at it and say what nonsense we were doing?
Yeah, it working. So, but
It's working. All right. And then they may ask the question, well, how did they treat the worst people in their society, the weakest people in society?
Well, we would look down upon them, so probably not good.
You understand? All right.
Yeah, yeah.
So, cool. Well, what tool do you think they may find um, that might exist in terms of an archaeological find that will indicate a lot of the activities that took place in our time frame?
Or they could like use books or like archives where they were still online. You might go back and
Yes, like that. I think they may find these all over the place. You think?
oh spoons.
Those kind of tools, yeah. Yeah. So that might be something that if we were to come back today, like everybody walks with a phone, right? I mean, if you just pay attention and you sit somewhere and just look at everybody, everybody's on a phone. They either have a phone, they're staring at it, doing something. So the minute they sit down, the phone comes out. Have you noticed that? You go anywhere and somebody sits down, they pull their phone out and they start flipping through. It's an
Yeah,
amazing thing, huh? Wow.
even in
It's
class, yes, yes.
yeah, yep, yep. Even right now, I'm suspecting that some people are just not paying attention to me. They're just flipping through their phone and watching what's going on the latest line that they missed. All right, Idris, thank you for contributing. All right, so that's anthropology, and that's one of the ways in which we look at leadership. We try to look at it from a historical point of view, but we also look at leadership from the recent history. And history um, at to the looks at what it does, it looks at the influence of key figures during significant time frames in history. So there must be some sort of major activity taking place, and then we look at the leadership that develops out of that. So let's look at these people here. What first off, the one thing I want to ask you, what event is associated with these four individuals? Let me ask somebody I haven't spoken to so far. Dominique, let's try Miss
World
Seabrook.
War, sir.
Which war?
Um, well, World War Two because I see.
World War Two. All right. Barely hearing you. So do you know these individuals? You identify who these four individuals are?
Um, Mainly Hitler and Stalin, but the other two, no.
All right. So Hitler and Stalin, but the other two you don't know. Okay. Can anybody help her? Anrada?
No, sir.
You don't know those folks? All right. What about Anjani?
No, I don't know them.
You don't know that. Well, I didn't mean from a personal point of view, but you should at least be able to identify them. All right. So let me identify these in it. So we know this gentleman here is Hitler. He led Germany. This individual is Joseph Stalin. He led Russia. This gentleman here is Winston Churchill. He was the Prime Minister of England at the time of the war. And this gentleman here is Roosevelt. He was the President of the United States at the time of the war. So these four individuals played a very important roles during World War II, where the objective of these three individuals here, Winston Churchill, President Roosevelt, and Stalin, was to get rid of Hitler because of his regime and what he was planning to do. When that war was finished, however, these two gentlemen, along with other members of the Western Alliance, kind of turned on Joseph Stalin because of the nature of leadership that he was developing in a totalitarian type of situation, and of course the brutality of it of his thing, which eventually led to the emergence of the Soviet Union, um, and the separation, and eventually you had the Iron Curtain coming down and separating the Soviet Union from the rest of the world, and led into in the 50s and 60s and up to the 80s, the Cold War between the West and the East. the Russian states and the others, until of course Russia had a falling out, well, financial fallout, and they eventually kind of came over to the other side. Good or bad, it's kind of indifferent to them. What about this gentleman here? What, who is he, and what social event was he associated or known for? Gabriel, go ahead. See your hands up.
So that is Martin Luther King.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Okay, my apologies.
Uh-huh. And
Bless
what
you.
what was he associated with?
The freedom of black persons in America.
Nope.
The equality of men.
You have to clarify. Renel, you want to add, Miss Jack?
Yes, sir. It was the civil rights movement.
The
The civil rights movement.
civil rights movement, right? So you're kind of breaking up there. So, Miss Nayak, you understand there's a difference in the naming?
All right.
Yeah, yeah. You have to be a little more specific because he was one of those leaders in the civil rights movement. So that's something else. All right. So what about this gentleman here? Hmm. And nobody knows who this guy is. Wow, I can't believe it. Nobody knows who this gentleman is. All right. So if I say Stokely Carmichael, anybody recognizes that name?
No, sir.
No.
No,
What if I
sir.
say Kwame Ture?
No, sir.
Still? Wow. Okay, so this gentleman is a Trinidadian who went to the United States or migrated to the States and started to study and became involved with the Black Power movement or the Black Panthers movement and was in fact synonymous with it. He became one of the leaders of it and brought that Black Power movement back to Trinidad in the 70s, 60s into the 70s, which eventually led to our Black Power revolution here in Trinidad in the 1970s. Really? You all know that was our first coup attempt or revolutionary movement in Trinidad, right? You all know that part of our history of Trinidad and Tobago, guys? Please say
No, sir.
yes. No. Who's saying no? Who's that?
Sir, to be honest, yes, I did know about it.
Uh-huh. You know the hard part about this is it's not part of our regular history syllabus. I don't know why. I don't know why. And it's a part. You know what? Any of you all ever looked at the Black Klansman? That film?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
Sorry. Yes. You. Yes. No. You didn't look at the Black Klansman.
So is that a
Look.
movie?
It's a movie. The Black Klansman. All right. Homework. Two films you're going to be looking at so far is Apocalypto and The Black Klansman. You're going to enjoy them. Hopefully, there will be films for you to look at. The Black Klansman features a situation in which a black guy inadvertently joined the Ku Klux Klan. And during the period that he was joined, it ended up having to have an agent who had to play that black person when they were attending meetings and so on, because of course you can have a black man. I mean, literally in the thing, but it turned up to be he applied and he got there. But the film, The Black Klansman, featured the time frame when the Ku Klux Klan had put out a hit on this gentleman, and that was around the time he was changing his name from um, Stokely to Kwame Ture. And the film featured on the time frame when the Ku Klux Klan was kind of trying to put things in place to assassinate um, Kwame Ture. And it's featured in the film. His character is featured in the film. So I want you all to look for that film and try and look at it, or at least read up on the film, The Black Klansman, because it's actually based on a true story. All right. Excuse me, guys. All right. So go and look for them. So let's look at another set of influential leaders in the United States, in the world, I should say, in the United States, my foot. Um, how many of these people do you recognize, and what influence do you think they had on the world during their periods in history, or what event was associated with them? Come on, folks. You must know some of them. Well, we already have. Get this,
Sir,
Gabrielle. Uh huh.
Sharika was speaking before me.
Okay, go ahead.
sir, I noticed about 7 people that I recognize.
All right. So, which ones? Point them out to me.
Nelson Mandela,
Right.
Elvis,
Elvis. Uh huh.
Marilyn Monroe,
Uh huh.
Dr. We just talked about
Martin
him.
Luther King. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Martin Luther, Mahatma
Hmm.
Gandhi, Hitler,
Right. This is
Mother
also with
Teresa.
Mother Teresa. Great. Okay. So we met Hitler here. We met Winston Churchill, and this is Roosevelt here as well. So these, and this is Stalin here. Next to Stalin is Lenin. All right. So let's look at what events or what influence they had. So we know that Hitler was responsible for the Nazi movement and the influence that they had. Um, Winston Churchill was the response, together with Roosevelt, was the response to him. We know that this is Joseph Stalin here, and Lenin. They collectively got together to set up and create the Soviet Union. That's the influential part that they had. Mahatma Gandhi and his peace process of protesting with peace, but it was associated with the independence of India. Um, Nelson Mandela is important for us to look at, because he was the person who was responsible for the end of apartheid. You all know that element, right? And next to him is actually Cecil Roach, who was the person who created apartheid. So you had some of the situation, or was one of the last proponents of apartheid, before it was eventually abolished. So this is Teddy Roosevelt as opposed to Franklin Roosevelt up here. He was important in terms of the trailblazing of, or the development of the United States and its Western expansion. The Ronald Reagan is juxtaposed with Castro, who led the socialist revolution in Cuba. Um, Reagan is important because he was the longest serving president of the United States, and he led to the change in the policy that the United States would not have a president cannot serve more than 2 consecutive terms. Um, this is Gorbachev. You all remember him? And this is Khrushchev. These are two leaders in Russia that embody the movement or the change away from the communist system or the socialist system, away into the democratic system. And Elvis Presley and these 4 gentlemen here, anybody recognizes him? Them?
Hi, sir. The
You
Beatles.
don't? The Beatles, yes. They were responsible for the development of rock and roll and a number of different genres of music, punk rock and folk rock and all that type of stuff. Um, so it, again, each one of these were leaders in a specific field, like with Elvis Presley and rock and roll, um, Marilyn Monroe, and that starlet type of movement in Hollywood. Of course, we know who we missed out here. This is Buzz Aldridge here with the race to the moon. I forgot that one. He just, and of course, Mother Teresa here was infamous for her movement towards um, looking after people in India in terms of poverty and being selfless in her life. So those are the kind of influences that these individuals. If your picture was up here, what do you think you'd be associated with? Don't answer that question. Think about that. If your picture is up here, what would it be associated with? That's the important question. All right. So one of the last areas of framework we could look at leadership from is through psychology and sociology. Of course, psychology looks at the behavior of understanding why people behave the way they do, and sociology looks at groups. So I think we have some sociologists or psychology students in this class today. Now, when we talk about these guys, we're really going to be focusing a lot on the work of these gentlemen here. This is Freud, Karl Marx, and this gentleman in the end here, this is B.F. Skinner. The reason why we're going to focus on a lot of the contributions coming out of them is because their work, especially B.F. Skinner, contributes heavily to the development of the relational leadership model that we're going to be looking at in terms of its development over time. And these are some of the theories that we're going to be looking at that they had influence over. So when we start to look at leadership theories, we're going to be visiting or at least outlining a lot of these. And the one that we're going to be focusing on is the relationship or the relational leadership model that we're going to be focusing on. So far, so good? You guys following this? All right. So the question that we want to ask at this point in time is, how does your field of study approach leadership? And two, how do you approach leadership in relation to that? These are questions that you want us to examine in your self-analysis and your reflections document. But if we could ask some questions, let's stay with the simpler one. How do leaders arrive in positions of leadership in the field of study that you are currently working in? So I know we have a couple of people here who are accounting. Any accountant wants to, or budding accounting student wants to come and tell me how do leaders arrive in that situation? There are no business students here, accounting students, sorry. Now I can quite easily just go to the detailed classes and call up people. Idris, what program are you doing?
Radiography.
Right. So tell me how do leaders arrive in your field of study from your
Um,
observations?
we definitely have to have work experience
Right.
and well the whatever degree
The
follow the
qualifications.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So yes, everybody would be qualified, but what is the key thing? It'll be their degree of experience that they get into, not so?
Definitely.
Right. Okay. BRB so AFK. What?
I'm
So
here,
somebody
sir.
wants to
I'm here.
translate this for me?
I said what it is in the brackets. It means away from keyboard. I stepped away just for a couple minutes, but I'm back.
What is
And I'm in mass
BRB?
communication. BRB is be right back. Sorry. I thought you would know
Okay.
that, sir.
And AFK.
That's away from keyboard. But apparently it's more of a gamer thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. I understand. That's another thing that we'll probably see a lot of when where is everybody? Wow, that's interesting. All right, that's something we're going to probably see as if we go backward in time, 1,000 years from now, we'll see all these emojis and stuff as part of the communication patterns of human beings. They talked with their thumbs. They were so amazing. Pictographs. All right, so Caleb, what degree are you doing? Tell me it's not radiography.
Yes, sir, radiography.
All right, well, all right. So, but we already had somebody from. Would you agree with his analysis, though, Idris?
Yes, you definitely need to have experience, and also more importantly, you need to understand how the department works, the ins and outs of it.
Right, the politics of
Um,
it.
yeah, because the leader in our field, you would call them the chief radiographer, and they know
Yep.
everything
Well, the,
radiology and outside that pertains to.
right. So it really has to do primarily with the length of service and experience that kind of gets them into those positions in the first place, right?
Yes, it's all
And
about that.
so it's a combination of qualifications and experience. Okay, cool. What about Jody? Um,
Yes, sir. I'm mass comm, mass
right. So your mass
communication.
communication. How do you see leadership? How does your field of study deal with leadership, or how do people arrive in leadership positions in your field of study?
Hmm. Arrive at leadership. I
Of
don't know if this is
positions
the
of
correct
leadership.
answer. I don't know if this
Mm-hmm.
is the correct answer, but of course, we've been seeing a rise of influencers.
Right.
So it seems as though, by just being popular and posting a lot of content, and I guess also knowing your audience and things like that, people adopt these leadership positions, from doing
Oh,
things like that, from
oh,
constant
oh,
posting and
well,
such.
would you say that an influencer is really a leader?
I would. I do think that they're considered thought leaders.
Mm. But in a niche, right? So
Well, I
that's a
mean,
but no, it's in a niche because it won't be something that everybody is going to be open to. Yes,
mhm. Ah,
it'll be
okay. I mean,
primarily those persons who are interested in the things that that person gets up to, that they will look to them as a leader.
yes,
Yes,
I suppose so.
yeah. Because if you think about it, in terms of influencers, because that's a interesting thing. Um, they look upon themselves as leaders because they have a way of being able to influence behaviors, correct, of other people.
Yeah.
Right. I'm thinking though in the industry of mass communication.
Hmm.
Let's open this up a little wider because your
Okay.
response is not incorrect. But in the industry itself of the mass communication industry, how do those traditional leaders find themselves in those positions of leadership?
Hmm. I suppose, similarly to radiography and such, they study, maybe they get their masters and their accolades, and they write their papers and yeah, things like that. Maybe
But
would you say
Judy,
so?
did you say you worked with McCann, that place? Was it you?
I have worked with them, not directly, like I worked.
Right, like as a freelancer or something.
Yes.
Right. Who's their leader? The company's
Well,
leader.
I can't say. I would just know who it was on that production.
I mean,
Who
when
was,
okay, right. So how did the person who arrived at the leader of that production team you were working with?
I suppose they were
That
appointed.
right, but they were appointed by somebody higher up.
Yes.
All right. So that's what I want you. You don't have to answer the question because it sounds that there's still some tugging and fro in there, but that's what I'm talking about. Does the leadership that exists in certain organization really reflect leadership? For example, produce. If we look at the broader environment of the film industry, people rise to leadership positions in film industries based upon the quality and performance that they either as an actor or the quality and performance of their production, correct? And you're looking from the producer's end, correct?
Yes.
Right. So the subject matter, the ability to control things and that type of stuff puts you into that position of leadership. So those are the kind of things that might be important for somebody in your field of study to become a leader in that field. So that's what we're talking about. So like for example, like what these boys were talking about before, these guys, about the radiography department. Yes, qualification starts it up, but then after qualifications, it's about the years of experience that they've put in, and the quality of work that they've done. That will then lead them to be respected as uh, good or better or competent individuals who are able to take on administrative roles and therefore move into those situations. One of the worst things that has happened to us, I'll give you like my personal example. One of the worst things that happens to teachers is quite the opposite. We have a tendency to keep our best teachers in the classroom and the worst teachers go into administration. Have you ever found that out? It's called Peter's principle.
Hmm.
If you ever come across this, Peter's principle is that the greater the level of incompetency that an individual portrays, the higher their potential for promotion. And it's quite true um, in the event that, especially in the public sector or the public service,
Yes. Oh my
in
God.
order to
Yes, exactly.
remove the negative influence on the majority of people, you push the person higher up the organization so they go away from where they do the most amount of damage. And that's an unfortunate thing that happens. So you have the most incompetent people being put into places where they are supposedly managed by other people. And that then leads to the situation where the better teachers remain in the classroom, which is good for the students, but it's not necessarily good for the organization, because now you have these people who have no idea what is necessary for um, appropriate and competent teaching to take place in the classroom, because they simply didn't care about their craft as a teacher. So that's something that happens in teaching service. I mean, there have been exceptions, of course, because one of the things that happens is that some teachers will eventually take on the leadership role over time. So it's based upon time, and they're just backing away from classes a bit to give them some more time. But I'll tell you the honest truth, I can't stand admissions administrative work. I prefer to teach a class than to go and run an office. That's a big headache. Prefer to be on the production lines, or what we call the toiling fields. All right. Anybody else wants to add what their proposed or field of study, how it arrives at those position of leadership? Thank you, Jody. No? All right, well, let's move along. Again, these are questions I want you to reflect on as well. Think about them, write about them in your reflections and your analysis. Those kind of things are going to be important. Because the other question is really around you, this is what is happening in terms of your field of study and so on, but how do you look at it? That's going to be the most important question that you have to look at. How do you look at leadership? All right. Okay, so the relational leadership model, which we eventually start to call the RLM model, is going to utilize or uses a lot of psychology and educational frameworks in order to lay out its structure and to lay out its theories and processes. And it begins with the first thing, learning about yourself. Now, if you remember the first chapter that you all are going to be dealing with, um, so learning about yourself or understanding self is where the actual relational leadership model begins from, in terms of the nitty gritty. So there's a chapter that one group has already been set up to present on that. It's important because it's where our starting point would be. So the relational leadership model requires that you learn about yourself, and secondly, that you become aware of who you are in the context of others. That means understanding others and understanding why others look at you in a particular way, because there's a difference. We have self perception, but other people, when they look at us, they may not necessarily see the same thing you see. And I'll tell you one of the things that is really interesting about this: 9 times out of 10, um, other people see things you can't see about yourself. That's almost opposite in nature. There are a couple of YouTube videos that I could have used, but it's going to be too long with that. But I've always looked at that. That self-perception. We always are our worst critics, and other people look at us and they would wish to be us. And you'd say, why would they want to be me? Kind of nonsense like that. There are a couple of really nice videos on that in terms of self-awareness in the context of others. And then, of course, the third element here that they identified was understanding your own values, beliefs, and commitments. This is the cornerstone of the relational leadership model. You have to start by knowing and understanding yourself and understanding these particular issues that we're working with here. Make sense so far? In terms of the development, so we talked about that self-awareness is what those things are that we listed before. Then you have to develop the skill of effective listening, the skill of collaboration, the skill of compromise, and the skill to put these things into practice. Of these here, one of the most difficult to accomplish is effective listening. And is there any, besides, I keep on picking on Judy, is there any other communication person in class? Judy, are there any other communication students in class that you're aware of?
I don't, yeah, no, I don't think so.
I don't think so. All right. So
No.
unfortunately, I'm going to ask you for me. This Can you remember the definition of what effective listening is? Or
Boy.
can you tell me what would be required for you as an individual or any individual to engage in effective listening?
Empathy? I don't know. Oh gosh, sir, I can't say off the top of my head the
Can't
definition.
remember. All
No, I
right.
can't
So
remember. But effective
there's something
listening.
that has to be done, effective listening in terms of the process of engaging in it.
Okay.
Anybody willing to help her remember? It's right there, Judy. You know it. It's just that it's not coming to the forefront because I'm putting you under pressure.
So
Be
Yes?
attentive.
is
Well,
this the
that's part
thing
of the
where it's
process,
like
being attentive. Go ahead.
there's a difference between hearing and listening? So you can hear what somebody's saying, but to listen, you have to actually like actively be paying attention and soaking any words that whoever the person you're listening to is saying, like that.
Yes, that is part of the process, paying attention and trying to listen to what the person is saying. But in order to do that, as a listener, we have to do something else. Judy, you remembering it yet?
Um, be unbiased, like just not just
You're hitting it. That's it. We have to suspend something.
okay. Judgment.
Yes. In order to effectively listen to anybody, we have to suspend our personal bias and suspend our personal judgment. And that is where the difficulty of effective listening comes from. Giving the time and the focus to the individual to listen to what they're saying is the easy part. It's the mechanical parts that we have to do. But the one that we have to do is to disengage our own personal evaluation mechanisms that's kind of built into. So you're listening and you're saying, this person talking rubbish or this person, that type of stuff. Taking that down and shutting it down to listen is really, really important, but also the most challenging part of the process of effective listening. And it is by far probably the most difficult skill here of these five that are listed. Because the only way you can effectively do that is to put it into practice. So it's easy to listen to things that we like, but it's really hard to listen to things we don't and to listen effectively to it. Now, one of the ways I used to practice or still kind of practice effective listening is to tune in to talk radio shows and listen to the absolute rubbish that people are spouting. Um, and I know my ex-wife and I used to have arguments all the time in the car because we spent a lot of time in traffic, of course, this being Trinidad. And I'd turn on these radio shows and I'd listen to them because I wanted to put into practice what point is the person trying to make, and try to separate out my emotional reaction to what was being said. And out of necessity, I would listen to people that I didn't want to hear. And that's a piece of practice that as a communication specialist you want to put into to effect, and you have to practice that skill. My ex-wife always had problems with me doing that. Of course, well, that's probably why she's my ex-wife now, because she hated me every time I tuned into those talk shows. She used to really have problems with that because she did not have the patience to listen to people, which is interesting. But try that as a technique. Try listening to music you don't like, for example, and try to see if you can understand what the musician or what the artist is saying in their music. And when I say trying to listen to music you don't like, different genres of music that you have problems with, or that you have a distaste for. Listening to something that you like and pleasing is very easy. But when you have to listen to things you don't like, people you don't like, point of views that you don't like, that is where the challenge comes. And that's the ambit of a leadership, of leadership individuals. You are going to be faced with a wide array of individuals coming into your organization, coming into your sphere of influence, and you have to be able to effectively listen to their position and point of view, and not be judging them or prejudging them before they even say anything, because you can't collaborate with somebody if you can't afford them effective listening. That makes sense. We understand the critical nature of,
Yes.
yeah, and that effective listening means to be aware that you have that bias. All right, so you need to be really aware of whether or not that bias exists in you because of whatever happened in your past, or whatever influences, whatever value structure that you have. And it's interesting that a lot of people who come from religious backgrounds are the worst at effective listening, because they have been indoctrinated under very narrow, um, uh, very narrow realms of behavioral practices. So anytime they come across anybody who sits on the peripherals of those boundaries, they have serious problems taking them seriously. Um, I don't know if any of you all would agree with me or feel insulted by what I say, but the reality is that we we don't automatically arrive on earth with these biases. We are taught these biases throughout our lives, by our parents, by our forefathers, by the institutions in which we find ourselves working in and working around. Those barriers, those issues begin to present themselves as barriers that prevent us from listening to other people who we consider different and outside of our norms. All right, so and I've found this especially with people who individuals who are heavily influenced by their religious backgrounds. They have serious problems effectively listening to other folks. All right. Some foundation principles of the leadership model that we're looking at. The first thing is that leadership concerns us all. Now I know this is a hard one because we always think, especially as we were very young, that that's big people thing, like no minds. I really don't care what's going on. But really and truly, if you think about it from that perspective, from the reality, the life you live is affected a great deal by what these individuals in leadership positions do. The decisions that they make, they impact upon us directly. Consider, for example, let me ask the question: was the last time any of you all in this class listened to a budget speech? Or I should ask a question: how many of you all listened to the last budget speech? A round of silence. Did you any of you all at least attempt to read it, or at least read the analysis of the budget?
So just the
Yes.
highlights.
Just the
Yeah,
highlights.
just the highlight.
uh, okay. So what you missed when you don't look at the highlights is the justification for what they're doing, and why they're doing, and what they're hoping to get out of it. So what was the highlights telling you, Cappy? Miss Thomas? Stop calling it cappy. In
That
the
gas
last
going
budget,
up.
that gas went up. No, it didn't.
Yes. Yes,
In
it
the
did.
last budget, no, gas prices didn't go up. The last budget, that was the
So
previous
gas
budget. The
always
last,
going up.
sorry,
Gas always going up.
no, it didn't. The last budget did not change the price of gas. You see, I think you're thinking about the wrong one. The biggest thing coming out of the last budget that was read is that property taxes are coming on board this year. Look
So I
back at the
remember that
last.
one too.
Yeah, that no, it's not two. They didn't change gas prices in this last budget. Just letting you know. Because I remember a lot of people were panicking and going to buy gas. Guys, gas prices did not change. Oh Lord. And you understand why now, as a foundation principle of leadership, we have to take into consideration it concerns us all. But at the same time, we have to understand that although it concerns us all, it is viewed by everybody differently and is valued by other people differently. So for some people in their lives, leaders are dime a dozen. I really don't care who they're, how it hang it swing. And them not important to my life. All right, them on their own beat, they could do what they want to do. All right, that's and we have to engage with people like that. If you were in a position of power or you're in a position of leadership, you're going to have to be able to treat with individuals like that to make them become vested in the objectives that you have as that particular leader. You have to understand that people are going to view that situation as being important or not important based upon where they are. Right. Another element is that leadership needs to be flexible and not static. This is like life. You can't just you can't think about things one way all the time. You have to be able to adjust to the circumstances and situation around you, and that of course different types of settings call for different types of leadership, and we are going to be looking at the various styles that thing. And one of the most important elements that we have to recognize is that leadership is a skill that can be learned and developed in people. That's one of the foundation principles of this model. Leadership is not something that is a gift from your lineage and that type of nonsense. Everybody has the potential to become leaders, and it's a skill that exists and is learned by other people. All right. So some in moving forward with the principles, some of the things that are required for us to become good leaders, all right, is a commitment to high ethical standards. All right, and you need that to encourage change and social responsibility. We will get back to social responsibility in a little bit, but more importantly, we have to develop these, or we have to have these qualities here: critical thinking capacities as a competency. We have to have, as a leader, a great deal of credibility, high levels of authenticity, impeccable integrity, and of course, um, good ethical conduct and values, behavior. Then. And probably the most critical one here has to do with your integrity, authenticity, and credibility, because it takes forever for an individual to build up their character. And it's in one instance, in one event, you can lose it all. All right. So therefore, those are really important because they're highly dependent upon each other. Your level of authenticity or truthfulness is definitely something that will impact upon your integrity and credibility. People would not view you as being credible if you know you're being untruthful about anything, and it doesn't matter. Any one thing will affect across the board. All right. So those are critical foundation requirements for us as leaders. All right, so there's a process now that we want to look at in terms of trying to get in the basic um, model going and developed. So we start first with the knowing part of the process. You must know yourself, you must know how change occurs, and you must know why people Why others view things differently than you. That's going to be important. So we go back to that self analysis that we all have to do. You must know who you are. You must understand why and how change takes place and why other people see things different to the way you do. And that's going to be really important. So that brings us to this exercise here. So, what do you all see in this picture?
A skull.
Okay, fine. Anybody else sees anything else?
I see a lady in
Lady.
mirror.
Yeah.
Do you see the skull as well?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, so you can see two images there, the skull and the. So, what makes up the teeth of the skull?
The bottles on the desk.
All right, it's nifty, isn't it? It's a real cool image. All right, let's look at this one. So, for anybody who has met this before, stay quiet. If you've seen this before, stay quiet because I think you'll know this exercise. For the person who's seeing this for the first time, what do you see?
A woman.
With what kind of woman? A old woman, a young woman,
A young woman.
and what is she doing?
She's looking the other direction.
She's looking
Um,
over her shoulder.
yes.
All
Is that a
right.
feather in her hair or something?
Yeah, yeah, kind of like a feather coming out the top of her hair. Yeah. Are other people seeing that young lady looking over her shoulder, away from us?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Mm. Anybody seeing anything else? Something different?
Yes, sir. I'm seeing an old woman.
You seen an old woman? What's the old woman doing?
She's looking down.
Right, looking almost depressed, sad. Yes.
Yes.
hmm Can anybody see both?
Yes, sir, I can.
You can. All right. Do other people see what these people are talking about, or these ladies are talking about? Let's see. How many people can see both the young lady and the old woman? All right. That's Gabrielle, Rihanna. All right. Good. That's it. Other people struggling with this image?
So I not
Ronnie
seeing the
sees.
old lady looking down.
Who's not seeing the old lady looking down? All right.
Dominique. I'm not seeing
Dom,
it at all.
you're not seeing it at all? All right. So Dominique says she's now. Be honest, guys. If you're seeing both images, fine. All right, that's quite good. Your perception is a little bit open, but this is a practice session here. So Dominique says she's not seeing the old woman looking down. So Dominique, let me show you something. Look at my. Are you seeing my mouse?
Yeah, I'm seeing your mouse.
Right. So look at my mouse here, and I'm gonna say this is the old lady's chin. Here, this is her mouth. This is her
Oh,
nose. This and this make up her eyes and eyelashes. This is the front of her hair. This is like a shawl she has over her head. She still has the same feather sticking up, and she has a coat that she's sort of like in a fur coat looking down kind of situation. You seeing it now?
yes, sir, I'm seeing it.
Right. But can you still see the young lady?
Yeah, I can see the young lady looking
Mm,
over her shoulder.
right. Good. Caleb, you see your hand up. Oh, I thought you were gonna ask a question. Anybody else who's having problems seeing those images?
Yes, I didn't see the old lady, only the young one.
Only the young one. Are you seeing the old lady now, though? After I did what I did,
A little better, yeah. Is the
a
old
little
lady,
better.
she has a big head or something?
Yeah, it looks kind of big, but it's kind of like a scarf over her head because her hair is poking out over her eyes. but she has like a scarf over the back of her head.
Okay.
If we think about this white area here, it's like a scarf going over the back of her head, but her head looks kind of large in relation to the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah, make a little bit of sense. All right, cool. All right, so let's look at this next image here. This is probably one of the biggest reasons why we argue, because we really aren't understanding that another person's perspective makes something look different. And it's not only just from a visual perspective, like these two gentlemen here who's arguing about 6 and 9, but the fact that everybody's coming from a different set of influences, from a different set of life experiences. And those impact upon how we view certain things. So we're all looking at one event, but based upon our past experience and past influences, it impacts upon how we view the event. And that's the gist of what this whole thing is about. And it's what, as a leader, we need to appreciate in order to be able to move forward with this. If we don't understand this, then we're going to fight uphill battles with people, trying to make them see the things that you are seeing, or the way that you are seeing it. They won't see it because they haven't been in your, they haven't gone through your life. The same thing that, so therefore it's more work on the leader's side to be able to take a walk in somebody else's life, understand them, to be able to understand why they're seeing things in that particular manner. A very good example of that is violence in the home. If you've lived your life where there's constantly been violence in the home, 9 times out of 10, as a spouse in your own home, you will condone violence in your own home, either to yourself or onto others, depending upon your experience in life. Regardless of what anybody else does or says around you, you would engage in it and you would condone it. And that's the reality. And you, as another person looking in, you'll probably say, why this person didn't just pick up and leave and go? It's because they've been conditioned into that, into viewing that as being normal. So this is one of the reasons why, as we look at children's development, saying negative to them things to them over and over is not a good thing, because it helps to shape their perception of themselves. If you keep on telling somebody they're stupid and they're dotish and that kind of stuff, which is one of the things that tends to happen, then the person is eventually going to say, well, I must be stupid and I must be, because my mom or my dad calls me that, or my brothers call me that all the time. That bullying tactic, and it can take place from both the family, and it can take place at school, all the things that we call each other, that type of stuff. That bullying tendency that takes place has the impact of shaping somebody's perception in a negative manner at times. Think about all those people you've been teasing all your life. Think about all the damage you've done. All right, so the second element here, besides the knowing, is the being. We must be ethical, principled, open, caring, and inclusive. And of all of the things that are listed here that we can understand, the most difficult is to be open. So, Denise, I know I haven't spoken to you before, but Denise, what do you understand by the concept of being open as a leader? Are you able to open your mic and speak? All right, Dominique, you were contributing before because you were asking questions. Dominique, what do you understand by that term in this statement as the developmental process? What do you understand by being open?
I think if we're talking about like being open, I think to genuinely being open to somebody is to put aside all your biases, all your judgments,
Correct.
and actually like listen to being open to what somebody else has to say, or to just
All
being
right.
open to somebody.
Very good. Now that also brings us to the next thing. You have to be open, and then you also have to care about that individual, even though you may not agree with their position and point of view,
and you have to include those people in your organization or in your activities. Is that going to be a challenge, you think?
Yes,
Yes,
sir. I think
Dominique.
that's one of the biggest challenges.
All right. Yeah, and that's true. The biggest challenge is to be open to begin with, because once you're open, it's easier. Um, the caring and inclusivity comes naturally afterwards. All right. Welcome back, Karina. Okay, so I like this quotation from Richard Branson, who was the guy with white hair that you weren't recognizing. Having a personality of caring about people is important. You cannot be a good leader unless you generally like people. And that is how you bring out the best in them. And I found this to be quite true. Um, if you, and I always bring this back to my teaching experience, if you don't like your students, you can't get the best out of them. And the best means that they do well at learning and understanding their work. I've had lots of instances where I've had teachers who don't like particular students in their class, or they don't like a particular class. And it shows. They go into that classroom, they behave in a particular way. You have to care about people in order to get the best out of them. And as a leader, it's really important, because if you go back here, you have to be not only open, but you have to really honestly care about how other people feel and what they do, which is why this becomes important. All right. So the last element of this three basic principle is the doing part. So we have the knowing, we have the being, and then we have the doing. So we must act in a socially responsible manner, and we have to be consistent with that behavior and congruent. So that consistent means every time a particular type of thing happens, we behave in the same way. Congruent means that regardless of the type of event, the behaviors also consistently across of all different types of events, whether congruently meaning at work, at home, in broader society, we behave the same way across the board. All right. And here we're talking about as your behavior in the community, as well as in the pursuit of your own personal commitments and personal passions in life. So it means that regardless of what you're doing and where you're operating, you behave the same way. And that way is socially responsible, that you're making sure that you're looking out for the well being of everybody. So, socially responsible is usually a descriptor of a type of behavior that's required by corporations. But if we look at it from a personal perspective, it means that whatever we're doing impacts upon society around us in a positive manner. Now, this is something that as Trinidadians I find we really bad at. And the best way to illustrate this social irresponsibility is to look at the way we drive in on the roads, or the way in which we throw rubbish at the sea, on beaches. We have very poor social responsibility ethics in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, we don't care about what is good for everybody. We focus a lot of our attention on what is good for me and me only. So in traffic, everybody wants to be front of the line. Nobody wants to be in the back. It don't work so. I don't care what happens to the person on the left or the right, especially if you're on a three-lane highway. I just want to do what I want to do, drive at the speed I want to drive. That's socially responsible behavior, because you need to pay attention to the behaviors of everybody around you, and what you do affects everybody. And that's something that unfortunately a lot of drivers don't seem to get. They don't seem to understand that your behavior in that chain of cars going down the road can have dramatic and irreversible impacts on everybody around you, or some of the individuals around you. Have any of you all ever been in a car accident of a multiple car smash up? It's a really scary and unfortunate circumstance. Any of you have had experience with multiple car smash ups? Doesn't have to be a big one, you know. It could be a little fender bender. But I hope you
Thankfully
understand.
not.
Sorry, Jody.
No, I was just saying, thankfully not.
Right. But Jody, would you agree with me when I say that one of the ways in which we can see our poor social responsibility ethic is in our behavior on the roads and the behavior in terms of littering?
Oh gosh, sir, for sure. Like sometimes when I'm driving and I notice that when people enter a kind of invisible box in the intersection, and they're just considering themselves and where they need to go, but I realize that if you don't enter that area, traffic will flow a lot easier for everyone. But a lot of the times we're selfish and we have our own agenda, and it creates a
Right?
problem for a lot of people around us.
Right. Because we are not acting in a positive manner to impact upon positive benefits to everybody. We're concerned only with what is better for me as opposed to what is better for everybody simultaneously. And that's the nature of what social responsibility is about. But we'll come back to those things a little bit. Now, thank you very much, Judy, again. So despite what we've just looked at, the knowing, being, doing, the principles of leadership and the developmental process cannot be just those three steps. We can't just reduce it down to that. That the method of developing our leadership skills is going to be one that is based in the reality around us. It helps us to develop a way of thinking and to create a personal philosophy of leadership and helps us to identify those critical core values that we have that will hopefully help us to work better with others. So these are the things that we have to go through a lot of exercises in the class and with the material to be able to help develop this personal philosophy of positive change and positive work. Now, if you notice here, it can help you work towards change. Now, I did not identify if the change was going to be positive or negative because it can be a relative term based upon the circumstances that we find. But remember that there has been, or there have been in the past, a lot of leaders who have made change, but the change may not necessarily be for good, as we saw with some of those photos we saw before. All right. So whenever we're looking at any form of developmental process, it means that we have to begin to look at changing the way in which we think about things, which is what is referred to as a paradigm shift. All right. So I know I have been told all my life if you want to get something done, you have to work hard at it. This text is telling us, or this model is going to tell us, that paradigm is too simplistic. So instead of just working harder, we need to also work smarter. And when this model talks about working smarter, it's referring to collectively smarter, reflectively smarter, and spiritually smarter. So what do we mean by that? Collectively smarter recognizes that the value of the group above the predominance of the individual, that collectively we are smarter than one of us. So all of us are smarter than one of us. And it makes sense. Because if you make a decision based only upon the information and expertise of one individual, you are ignoring the possibility of various perceptions looking at the same problem, bringing all their years of experience and all of their different spheres of experience to influence and to shape a collective solution. Unfortunately, being collectively smarter requires a lot more work. It requires a lot more effort because it takes time to bring all of those concepts and ideas together to help to develop one relationship or one solution that encompasses everybody's input. That's something that you're going to have to deal with because collectively you're going to have to come up with a method of presenting your chapters so that it makes the information clear to the class. That's going to be your challenge. And remember that collectively, you are all smarter together. Don't see by yourself. Reflectively smarter. Something that we oftentimes don't pay attention to is the fact that we need to take time to reflect on the past and what we've done and how we've done things in order to make improvements in the future. And reflectively smarter means that we need to oftentimes reflect upon what has gone in the past in order to gain perspective of what took place and understanding so that we can make necessary improvements to what we do going forward. Now, the speed at which life and work approaches us does not help with this particular process. Reflection requires time, and unfortunately, the speed at which everything is approaching us. I mean, I know about this from my teaching practice. From the time you're finished working on one semester, you're prepping for another semester, and you're getting another class ready, and you don't really have time to sit and think about how can I make things better from one semester to the next. You have to force time in to get, you have to actually sort of like create a time block where you're going to just sit and just pay attention to that time and try and do that evaluation, because if we were to do it more and more often, it means that we'll have a tendency to avoid previous mistakes made and improve things not only for yourself but again in the context of making things more important or more amenable to everybody around you. So reflection is a tool that is necessary but oftentimes overlooked, primarily because of the speed at which everything's being done or the speed at which everybody wants us to get things done. Now, spiritually smarter doesn't have to do with anything about religion, but it has to do more with those value structures that we hold closest to us. We have to become very aware of those values and belief structures that are our core values. Let's put it like that. What are our true core values? Now, if you ever want to see what somebody's core values are, what they hold dear to them, is to put them in a situation of absolute stress. So, think about the last time you were under a lot of pressure. Let's say you were dealing with the death of an individual, the loss of a partner, or the death of a parent or child, or something along those lines. Think about your behavior with the people around you during those periods. What were you doing? How were you treating others? Try and reflect upon what you did then. Did you regret what you did? Or were you, gracious in that situation? Think about another situation. You've been accused of something and you did or didn't do it, or some aspect is you're in a real stressful situation. How did you respond? Did you lie? Did you cheat? Those are the things that tell us when you are in trouble. The behaviors that you exhibit during that period of time tell us who you are, who you really are, and what is most important to you in terms of what your core values are. This is a critical thing. And when we talk about being smarter, we're talking about understanding this because we know what our core beliefs are. This is what it means when we talk about being spiritually smarter. Being aware of what I am willing to do. Uh, Oftentimes in a film, you'd see this being displayed. Um, and I don't know about you, but sometimes they create this they create a situation in which they put the protagonist in a situation where they are inundated with a lot of um, negative things are happening to them, to the point that when, as the audience, we look at the person then turn around and kill somebody else in the film, we feel a sense of justification that, you know, they kill. I don't know. Have you all ever experienced that in terms of looking at a film and when the main protagonist eventually executes somebody else or kills them, you feel a sense of justification. You feel really
Yeah.
happy
So
that. y- Yes,
I'm
Judy, that
sorry.
it falls in your ballpark. Yes, that's true.
But generally, yeah, the characters definitely need to go through a lot of conflict and want something that they can't
Struggle, yeah,
have. So yeah,
yeah.
go through a lot of struggle. So by the time they get it, yeah, you do. And I guess that's characterization probably too. If it is you, probably are able to empathize and really
Right, that's
feel
it.
for the
Hmm.
character.
That,
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of the reasons why I like to look at villains, because the person who has to develop and that's the writer, the script writer, and the actor themselves, the person who has to play a character that walks that middle line. They're not quite the bad guy, but they're not quite the good guy. They're kind of in that gray area. I love those characters. Um, to this day, one of my favorite characters was the Joker in what was it, Batman Returns, I think, with Keith Ledger. That was probably one of the best performances I've ever seen of somebody walk that road of justifiable homicidal activities. I mean, it was really, really a masterful display of it. But more importantly, the writers of those movies are creating it or trying to create that sense of um, of audience feeling committed to the individual, so that by the time the the star of the movie or as I said, the main protagonist eventually slaughters somebody and shoots them or whatever. It's a really guttural film to look at. I Spit on Your Grave. Any of you all ever looked at that film? Wow, another film for you all to go and look at. This
Yes.
one's really. Who saw that? Who's that? Who said yes?
Me,
Mr.
Paige.
Page? You saw I Spit on Your, and there's a part two as well, not so,
Yeah.
Page? Right. That's a really. If you have never seen that film, have a look at it. But I mean, if you're not into horrific violence, make sure don't look at it. So there's a third option there. That's a really violent movie, and it's violence against women in particular. Um, Not something that is politically correct these days, but it's an interesting movie for you to look at in relation to that. It kind of speaks to some of the core values of that individual, and the way in which they develop that character is what I'm talking about. Um, Getting to understand what are the core beliefs of that character is about you pulling yourself apart and what would you do in a circumstance like that. That's the whole thing you have to think about. If you were in her position or in that character's position, what would you do? That's that 95 $6,500 question. If you found $1 million in a suitcase, what would you do? You don't have to answer that now, but that's the kind of question that you're looking at. Okay, so when we talk about paradigms, we're talking about ways in which or patterns in which we look at things in order for them to make sense. So, answer this question, and if you can, what is your current leadership paradigm? That has to do with where you currently stand in terms of looking at leadership around you. Now, when we look at the world around us, um, what we have to look at is the world telling us there's a need for us to make changes to the way in which leadership runs? Is this democratic system of leadership really the best way for us to um, select leadership or to determine who leads our countries and who becomes leaders in our environments? Is that the best way? Are there other systems that we can look? Is there a need, therefore, for a paradigm shift? Meaning a way in which we change the way in which we look and try to understand things. Now, I am looking at the area of leadership particularly, but there is paradigm shifting required in a lot of other aspects of our lives. Can any of you all suggest any other paradigm shifting that should be looking at treating with different issues and problems in our life around us? No? What about crime? Do you think there's a need for a paradigm shift there in our country? Healthcare, education. Is there a need for us to make some significant departures from the preconceived notions that we have at this point in time? You guys hearing me, right? So I'm not seeing responses here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So,
Sir, for
yeah.
me, just to be honest, how I process things, sometimes it's difficult for me to understand the question. So I may, have to read it
Think
two or
about it.
three times. Yeah.
Hmm.
Not even just think about it, but read the question. Yeah, two or three times. Yes, think about it, process it, to be able to answer. But
That makes sense.
sometimes
That
half the
that's not a
problem
yeah,
is
that's not a
understanding the
problem.
question.
Good. But that's not a problem because I mean the intention is not for you to find answers at this immediately, but to really um, make provoke you into thinking about things from a different perspective to change the way in which you're looking at things. So this is the paradigm shift we want to pay attention to here. This paradigm shift here has to do with our concept of leadership. Leadership is not something about a leader, that what the leader possesses, but so much as a process that involves followership. So the paradigm shift here is that whenever we talk about leadership, we focus our attention on what the leader does, and we don't pay a lot of attention to what the participants in that leadership do. So this paradigm shift that we're looking at here within this model is that we have to begin to focus our attention on what is the followership doing that gives this leader his gives him power, because without followers a leader has no power. You'd agree with that, right? um, and this, yes.
Yes.
All right, good. And followership is really, if we look at the last statement there, followership is really leadership in action amongst people in the group. So without having a followership, you can't do anything. So you could be a leader of a lot of things. But so it's important for us to understand that the followers in an organization, the subordinate elements of your of the organization, are critical to the leader. And if the leader doesn't recognize the importance of the followership, they're going to fail big time. And this model, as opposed to a lot of the other models that exist before, um, in the past, they focus more on the actions of the leader, not so much upon the relationship and the actions of the followers. So we're going to be looking at that. So one of the first things you can look at here in terms of analyzing your follower and the types of followers that you have around you is to look at this matrix here, where we're looking at the relational initiative of the individuals that are in your followers to the performance initiative. So most of us would like to have this, or like to think, if all right, so I want you to think about this as how you behave when you have group work. And in Costard, I know all of you all have had lots of group work. How do you behave? Are you a partner, a subordinate, a politician, or contributor? Do you exhibit high relational initiatives with high performance initiatives as a partner? All right. Or are you a subordinate? You sit back and you wait for everybody to do everything and then do what everybody else tells you. Um, and you're unwilling to do anything unless you've been told to do it. Or are you a contributor? Somebody who's willing to work in the background in terms of performance, but you're not willing to take the limelight. Like, let's say you're not willing to get in front of the class and present all the work, which is what I think. Or are you like the politician, real good on the presentation element, but have um, no performance initiative, which means you're not willing do to put the work in to actually get all of the necessary information together for the presentation. So as a leader, if you are looking at your people in your group, and you could start to kind of like, as I say, pigeonhole them and say, okay, this person is a partner, this person is a politician, so on, so on, so on. You have to work on strategies now. So partners are problematic because partners have the ability to challenge the leader themselves. So so a lot of people look towards partners as being very difficult to manage because they will challenge you if necessary, if you're making decisions or your position is not in congruence with what their thinking is. Now, one of the best ways to treat with a situation where you have this spread of information or spread of individuals is to partner your partners with your subordinates. Let them get these as their people to make sure they're doing their work, getting their stuff on, getting things together, and and pair up contributors with politicians. So the politician will handle the relational aspect, where the contributor will handle the performance aspect. You all understand what I'm talking about here in terms of thinking about this from a group presentation point of view. You have work to get done. You want everybody to be equal in their performance, but the whole point is not everybody has the capacity or the willingness to do so. Similarly, when you're presenting, not everybody has that high level of relational initiative to be the better performer in a presentation. Now, one of the things that I am going to insist in your in your chapter presentation is that everybody needs to take a turn. However, I'm not saying that everybody needs to be, um, let's put it this way. You all can choose to use the resources you have among you in the best possible way you think will work. All right? Um, but everybody must play a part in that presentation. So I'll just throw that out to you as a piece of advice. How you manage the tools within your group is going to be a critical thing that we're going to be looking at. I'm going to be looking at in terms of how you use those tools. So another methodology that is utilized to a different model is the Hyacinth model of evaluating followers. Is this comes from a more political background where the leader has around him 7 different types of followers: loyalists, sycophants, critics, opportunists, spectators, traitors, and realists. So, if a leader is able to evaluate the people around them and kind of pigeonhole them again into whatever category, you will understand that they knowing the type of follower they are gives you power in terms of how to deal with them and how to manage them, especially in political organizations. This is going to be important for you to look at. There's another model that we're going to look at in a little bit um, in terms of engagement levels that we'll see. But again, the purpose of a model like this is to really understand that you have, as a leader, different types of followers, and you need to understand how how you're going to manage these individuals and utilize them to be able to get your objectives accomplished. Now, what are the responsibilities of true followers? Followers should offer the support to leaders. That's across the board. All right, that followers should take initiative and not wait to be asked to do things. They should also play counseling and coaching roles to both other followers as well as the leader. Now, this is not necessarily something that a leader would appreciate, but it's important that they do so. And leaders need to understand that leaders don't know everything they need to, and therefore they sometimes need to be coached on how to do it and counseled on when they do things that they're not supposed to do. All right, raise issues and or concerns when necessary. That's also a big responsibility of followers. And they can see from their perspective when things are going right, when things are going wrong, and when things are not going wrong or right. They need to be able to raise those issues with the leader and with other people in the organization to make sure that we are all following the same track, and that track that we're following has a high level of ethical values attached to it. Seek and encourage honest feedback. That's something that a lot of us hate. We want it, but we don't want it. It's kind of double-edged sword. Honest feedback means you have to be willing to listen to somebody be critical about you, and not taking what is being said as an insult, but as an opportunity to correct um, problems that you have. Clarify your role and expectation. So, if you are in a position of as a follower within an organization, you need to make sure that you understand what you are supposed to be doing, both in terms of your actual expected rules as opposed to what you're supposed to actually do. You need to understand those things. What are your objectives? What are you allowed to do? What are the boundaries in which you operate? That has to be really importantly clarified for you. Show appreciation not only to um, the fellow followers, but also to the leader. Sometimes that doesn't happen enough. Leaders tend to show appreciation to followers more often than followers um, um, exhibit and communicate appreciation to leaders. Simply because it's kind of a weird thing, but it's something that ought to be doing. Keep your leader informed. That's a critical. You want the leader to make good decisions, then the information flow has to be constant. They need to be informed of everything at all times. And resist inappropriate influences of the leader. So you're not there to pander to the needs and behaviors of a questionable leader. You need to resist that influence because um, that's not what we're about. So if you're with somebody who engages in a particular type of, let's say you're working in an organization and this person tends to be a little um, too touchy feely with the woman in the group, you need to tell that person, hey, you need to be watching that. You need to advise them and counsel them. That's the coaching role here. But you, as another man in the organization, don't use that as an influence of how you're going to treat with the women in the group as well. You understand? As this is especially when we're looking at organizations where, especially of late, this Me Too movement talks about the amount of gender bias and gender gender violence that takes place in organizations and harassment issues that come up. Those are the kind of things that you want to pay attention to, both as a subordinate and as a leader. But your responsibility as a follower is to be able to do this, resist those influences. Now, in order to perform those responsibilities, these are the competencies that are required. Followers need to be loyal. All right, they have to be loyal to the leader. If you're not loyal to the leader, get out of that organization. All right, they have to be able to function well in change-oriented environments because, as with any dynamic organization, there is going to be massive amount of change and sometimes rapid change in the organization. So therefore, a follower and a leader eventually is going to have to operate within those walls. Functions well on teams. Oftentimes, you're going to find yourself being moved from one team to another very quickly to quickly find solutions to problems or quickly prepare and organize things and get that done and then move on to another activity. So, that velocity of change is going to be also part of the situation, and the ability to work with teams is going to be critical. Think independently and critically. That's an important thing. Oftentimes, leaders do not appreciate followers who think independently and critically, simply because independent and critical thinking leads you to question decisions that are not thought out well by the leader, and of course considers integrity of paramount importance. Your integrity and ethical values are unquestionable and unshakable. And so you expect the best, and therefore you want it from everybody. All right? That's going to be your competencies, both as a follower. All right? So if those are the kind of things that we're asking our followers, is follower the best word to use to describe those types of individuals? What might you suggest? Anybody besides Jody?
Team member.
Right, that's a good one. Anybody else? How about an associate? Would you agree with that?
A colleague.
Colleague, right? Good. Those are nice terms. Yes, excellent. All right. Thank you very much for contributing again. Okay, so this is the other model I was talking about in terms of analyzing followers. What tends to happen when we are looking at people in organizations is that they tend to kind of fall again into these things. And as a leader, you need to understand this so that you be able to know what's happening. If you find, all right, so again, the matrix here is on the y-axis, we're looking at the level of independent and critical thinking, and on the, did I say that right? On the x-axis, yes, we're looking at the level of activity and involvement, which is from active to passive. Now we're using the four quadrant graphical representation here. So those people who are active and critical thinkers are what we refer to as effective followers. You want the vast majority there. As opposed to them on the opposite side, you have passive people who are uncritical and highly dependent. Sheep. These are the people who you can easily lead into any direction, and they're not thinking for themselves, and they won't do anything until they're told to do it. Then you have another set of people who are active, but again, they are uncritical in thinking. They're not going to think for themselves. These are the yes people. You want those. You want to have. Well, most political organizations tend to have a lot of yes people. They do it because they see themselves benefiting in one way or the other. It's almost sycophants in nature. But what I've found in Trinidad and Tobago is that a lot of people who are parts of our society fall into alienated groupings. And this is where they are highly independent and critical thinking, highly intelligent people, but they have disengaged from engaging in their civic actions of voting and participating in leadership. And this is something that leaders need to be paying attention to because those alienated people um, have the probability of changing the game only if the leader tries to find out why they are alienated, because you really want to move them across the board into more that survivors area, into the area where they will actually actively take part in things. um, Now, why would I make that statement? How of especially when we look at our electorate, we have a lot of alienated people in our society, or marginalized individuals, um, who have given up on looking at any form of party politics as being a solution for the world around us. Why? How do I? Why do I make that statement? Anybody can work that out. What's the logistics that gives me that content or that thinking? Anybody? Nobody? Well, what you want to look at is what is the participation rate of elections? How many people are not voting? That's what you want to look for. All right. And if you find that the vast majority of people are not voting in your society, something's wrong. And you have to pay attention to that. What's happening? Because in essence, basically, you have a minority of people who are taking control of a situation. All right, so let's kind of go through this because we're running out of time. All right, so the different types of leadership we talked about before, that different situations call for different leadership techniques or styles. So you have the classical approaches, which is laissez-faire, autocratic, and participative. Those are the classic approaches to leadership. You have situational, which is leadership that people who emerge or lead based upon what the situation requires. So they would use laissez-faire approaches based upon the situation, autocratic or participative, depending upon the situation. Emergent leadership would be people who emerge from within an organization to take charge of and control of things after being immersed in an organization as a subordinate. Emergent type of leadership. Transactional. This is a leader who utilizes methodologies of creating small transactions to get things done. We do this with children a lot. You know, if you do this, you'll get a treat. If you do that, you'll get punished. That kind of negative and positive type of reinforcement. Transactional leadership, or methodologies in leadership is effective, but um, is short-lived because once the reward is removed or the transactional approach is removed, the person stops contributing. Yes, Judy.
So, with transactional leadership, does this happen often, would you say, in insurance?
It happens in most corporations. If
Okay.
you think about it, you work for a
With
salary, right?
commissions? Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sorry?
Okay.
Yeah?
No, no, no. You're saying
Uh,
salaries, but I was just saying with them, they also have, I guess, these incentives to
Bonuses.
get
Correct.
trip, yes,
Yes.
bonuses, yeah.
Yeah. Bonus activities that encourage more activity out of them. All right. Now, another form of leadership style is transformational. So this would be where, especially in circumstances of change, um, where a leader is helping organizations and people to transform the organization and therefore themselves from one type of being or one type of organizational structure and so on into another. Transformational leaders have to be more motivational in nature and require a lot more to be able to move people from one position to another. Also, transformational leaders tend to be more of uh, they have to work a lot harder because they're working in an environment that people are probably going to be negatively impacted by the change that's making place or taking place, and they're therefore going to be having some issues, uh, and therefore they require a lot more work to get that done. Visionary styles of leadership would be an individual who can paint a really clear, detailed picture of a vision not yet available, but is inspiring others to approach it. And sometimes even in their absence, that vision was created by that leader helps the organization move forward um, into that thing. So that's different styles
Like
of leadership.
Dr. Martin Luther King
Correct.
Jr.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. Exactly that. All right. So, who's the leader? Is a leader is any person who actively engages with others to accomplish change. Notice again, I'm not saying positive or negative, as change is a relative construct. All right. What is the purpose of leaders? Motivate employees, attain the goals of the organization, ensure that whatever rules there are in the organization are adhered to, provide continuity and momentum, especially in circumstances of change, continuity of action, and momentum to accomplish the change that is required. The leader must embrace and foster change. They must do everything for the common good or with the common good in mind. They must exhibit social responsibility, civic engagement, and civic responsibility. So we have to get some clarification. Most of these are fairly clear. So when we talk about social responsibility, we spoke about this before, is to ensure that whatever we're doing as a leader, it is going to be to the well-being of everybody around us, the people in the organization, the world that we exist in, and the general public around us. So it cannot be negative to anybody and anything in our environment. That's a huge order, just letting you know that. Civic engagement, a heightened sense of responsibility for all of the communities in and around which you operate. Your work environment, your social environment, your family, community, every environment that you are is in and around you. There's a degree of a heightened sense of responsibility for being part of it and being understanding of what you do impacts positively and negatively in it. So you are responsible for those communities. So when we talk about civic engagement, we're talking about civic action, like, and you could look at yourself in terms of what are the things you probably get into. Volunteering and service. Any of you all participate in community activities? Think about it from that next thing. Civic commitments, willingness to make positive contributions to your society. Again, like, participating in community cleanup days and looking after the environment around you, or if the community is having some sort of activity that you go out there and participate. Civic skills, the ability to be involved in civil society, politics, and democracy. So again, this is about your civic engagement. You're engaging in, so they're having political meetings and stuff like that. You go out, you listen, you participate, you go and vote, that type of stuff. Social cohesion, a sense of reciprocity, trust, and bonding with each other. So you're not suspicious, you're not distrusting. You do things not with the expectation that other people will do things back for you, but you do it knowing that the sense of reciprocity will move forward. So it's sort of like a paid forward momentum that you're talking about. You do something good for the neighbor, and the neighbor does something good for the neighbor on the other side, that kind of situation. And that you trust that we all have the same value structure that governs everything. All right. Civic responsibility, a sense of personal responsibility that you should feel to uphold your obligations of part of the community we all work in. So that engages in things like um, two areas: duties and responsibilities. This is some of the things that we talk about. Any of you all have ever participated in jury duty? All of you all have participated in going to school. You obey most laws, and for those of you who work, pay some form of taxes, and even if you don't work, you pay taxes once you spend money. All right. In terms of your responsibilities, voting, community service, it's not big for us here to have service in the military. That's more of a voluntary action, and of course, displaying patriotism. Um, I find patriotism in Trinidad is a flighty thing. People are patriotic only when it serves them, or it's the in thing. Still remember all of those times where we had massive sales of flags when the football team went to Germany and that kind of stuff. I don't know if you all remember all those things. If any of you were alive then, because that was a while back. All right. Question: should the leader know everything? Well, the short answer is no. But a lot of leaders would hate for people to think that they don't know everything, but it's impractical. Nobody knows everything, and it's foolhardy to try and fool people into thinking that you know everything around you, everything about any subject. That's absolutely ridiculous. So, if that's the case, if we know that leaders will not know everything, then it is important that leaders are open towards learning, both as an individual and as group. And we'll see that. And again, what reminds us here is that all of us are smarter than one of us. And that's what kind of reinforces that coming from that situation. The entire organization, including the leader, needs to make sure that the environment is open to learning, making mistakes, and sharing knowledge. Some leaders, unfortunately, um, don't allow for errors, and they don't allow for knowledge sharing, and they aren't open to learning. What type of leader you want to be? I know in my experiences, many times I've had presidents of the college, for example, come in to training sessions that we've been having as faculty members and sit in the class with us and learn new techniques, new things, new pedagogy activities and stuff like that alongside us. And so it's a liberating experience to be with your leader of the organization while learning together and making a mess of it too. I remember that lots of times because it humanizes the individual. It disarms you, and you feel more inclusive. I mean, it's we as a team working together to get things done. sharing knowledge. It's a natural part. But there are some leaders who will not do that. They will not make themselves appear vulnerable in the wider environment. They look at it as a form of showing weakness. So, when we talk about learning now, so we have to look at the learning models. So, in order to, when we learn things, we have to engage our focus, our capacity, and our willingness. We need all three of these things working in tandem, well, working in all together to be able to learn. If we don't engage all, we can't. All right, so remember that. You could look at this again if you want. This is another model. This is the academic learning thing. For those of you who have science backgrounds, you will recognize this. This is how theory comes into be. It's referred to as a scientific method. You have an idea that you conceptualize. You build an experiment to test it. You work it in there. You go through um, this process here. You observe the experiences. You reflect upon it. You either go back and make conceptualized changes and do the application again and measure the outcome. Um, Based upon that whole critical evaluation, then it becomes accepted into existing theory and then is put into broader applications outside. That's the scientific methodology. Hypothesis testing is what's referred to in its truest form. All right. So the most effective organizations outside there actually engage in what is referred to as lifelong learning. If you look at the college's um, vision and mission statement, we actually talk about this. One of our goals in the organization is to create lifelong learners in all of our students, staff, and faculty. Once you engage in life, you should be engaged in learning. And if you think about it, we learn if we stay current only as long as we continually learn. And if you really think about it, we learn some of the biggest lessons when we die too. So because nobody knows what's happening on the other side, because nobody's ever come back and said, "Hey, this is what's going to happen." So we still have something to learn. Lifelong learners, continue to challenge yourself. Um, learn new things. Put yourself on the line. The best organizations out there are learning organizations. If you think of Google, for example, they're one of the most important organizations or one of the most valued organizations for that. Because there's a constant learning environment that they keep on trying to create so that they can be at the cutting edge of their work. All right. Another form of learning that we have to pay attention to is by far for me one of the most important ways to learn as learning through your experiences. So sometimes we come to information by what we do, which is our concrete experience, or we come by new information by thinking about it, conceptualizing, thinking about something. Now this is especially the second element is especially important in creative fields where you have to think about something before you can do it. Now, um, regardless, you kind of have to do both. Huh? But the whole thing about it is that whether or not you go through that concrete experience or you do the let me go back to the abstract conceptualization, you're still in that way you require the need to reflect upon what took place and then try to get that thing to work. So I think this might be the best way for us to look at it. Again, it's experiential learning is from an experience. You reflect upon what took place, you think about it, and then you experiment about trying to make it better. Experience is probably one of the best teachers that we have outside there, and it's something that we have to pay attention to. All right. So as we come to the close here, what I want to say to everybody is that one of the things that we're going to be looking at here is you engaging in leadership type activities because leadership is not something for just some holy grail set of people. It is about everybody being willing to take the opportunity to take leadership positions. All right, so this quotation by a student from the text is really important. Leadership, hold a second. Welcome back, Naomi. So this is the quotation I was talking about. Leadership is a role open to anyone. Leadership is living by a personal set of rules in which you motivate others to do the right thing, be engaged in the world, and to listen to others and their concerns. Leadership is focused on the other person. And far too often, whenever I come across leadership, or too often, and especially in the corporate world, the leadership is focused only on the objectives of the organization and what it does for them, as opposed to what they can do for other people to empower them to get things done. That to me is always going to be the important thing. All right, so I want to invite you to take this journey with us. Um, so this is the thing I want to say. Leadership is not the privilege of the few. You and I can be and should be leaders. So that's what I want to invite you on this march in the rest of the semester for us to be able to do this. Now, um, we have, I have two more chapters to do with you. Um, the next presentation is not next week because next week Tuesday, of course, is Carnival. So the next class I have with you is the 20th. If perchance you get a thing, I'd really like you to go through those PowerPoints before, because they're really long and I'm not going to be able to cover all of them within the time frame, because it's going to engage a lot of discussion. Um, and those PowerPoints are set up more to cover the material in the text for self-consumption rather than presentation. All right, which is why we're going to see a lot of slides in that. So don't get yourself in a panic. We'll still go through them as much as we can. All right, but in the next chapter, we are going to be looking at the development of leadership and leadership theories throughout history, and we're going to be looking at a lot of the context under which they've been developed. And then the third chapter, we're going to be looking in more detail at the relational leadership model. All right. So, anybody has any questions that they want to ask at this point in time while we wrap up? No? Maybe? I see something in the chat. Keywords bonus. I find they should lower gas prices. Quality of gas went down for sure. You guys were having a chat on the side there. All right, guys. Anybody has any questions they want to ask, clarification they want to get from what they saw today? Or you just bored of your skulls?
No, sir.
No,
Everything's
sir.
okay? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. I know, as I said, we don't have any classes next week. Um, and it's Carnival. I'd like to ask you, enjoy yourselves, but be safe, please, because I want to see you the following week. All right.
Same to you, sir.
Any. All right, guys. Have fun, and as I said, be safe. So that's it for me tonight. Um, Good luck and be safe with Carnival. And if you can't be safe, be careful.
Night, sir. Night, everyone.
Good night, guys.
I have a good
Good
night.
night. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Naya, you guys okay?
Yes, sir, Sam, it's fine.
All right.
Enjoy
And
your
Rado?
time.
All right. Enjoy your carnival as well. Be safe. And Rado, you okay?
So she probably sleeping.
Sometimes it's kind of hang up. I'll organize that and thing that. All right. Good night,
Good
Gabriel.
night.